Picture this. It is late spring in 1971. The Hamtramck Assembly Plant sits on the northern border of Detroit, 8 stories tall, 5 million square feet, smelling of cutting oil and welding sparks, and the warm rubber of 1,000 fan belts. Inside, on the trim line, a man in a United Auto Workers Local 3 jacket is bolting the last black billboard decal onto a Sno-White convertible. He has done this 900 times this week. He does not know it. Nobody on this floor knows it. The car under his hands will one day be worth more than the building. There are 11 of them. Some count 12. Even Stellantis, the company that owns what is left of Plymouth, will not commit to a final number. What everyone agrees on is this. In the last year that the 426 Hemi was sold to the public, in the last year that Plymouth offered a Cuda Convertible, in the last year before insurance companies and emissions law killed the American muscle car, the Hamtramck plant built somewhere between 11 and 12 Hemi Cuda Convertibles. Today, each one is worth between $2 and $4 million. They are the most expensive American muscle cars on Earth. By the spring of 1971, the muscle car was already dying. Most buyers did not know it yet. Plymouth dealers were still printing brochures showing yellow Cudas with billboard graphics and shaker hoods. But the men who ran the actuarial tables at State Farm and Aetna knew. The men at the Environmental Protection Agency, founded by executive order on December 2, 1970, knew. The Clean Air Act had been signed by President Nixon on December 31st of that same year, and it was about to require a 90% reduction in vehicle emissions by 1975. The compression ratio of the Hemi, 10.25 to 1, would be illegal in 1972. The leaded gasoline it needed to run without detonation would be phased out within a generation. None of that mattered as much as the insurance companies. In late 1969, Dean W. Jeffers, the president of Nationwide Mutual, announced that his company would impose a 50% surcharge on what he called overpowered cars. Within weeks, Aetna, State Farm, Travelers, and Allstate followed. By 1971, a young man walking into a Plymouth dealership with the down payment for a Hemi Cuda would often walk out with a Volkswagen because no insurance company in his state would write a policy on the car at any price. State Farm had run the numbers. Muscle cars were generating 56% higher loss claims and 117% higher comprehensive claims than ordinary cars. The men who built the Hemi at Hamtramck were watching their best engine become uninsurable. The result was a sales cliff. In 1970, Chrysler installed 1,543 street Hemis. In 1971, that number fell to 368. Of those, only 115 went into Cudas. And of those 115, only 11 or 12 got the convertible top. The protagonist of this story is not a man. It is a car, and there are 11 of them, scattered now across 3 continents. 7 were sold in the United States. 5 were shipped to Canada and France because dealers there did not face the same insurance crisis and because Plymouth needed the orders. The first one rolled off the Hamtramck line on September 9, 1970, painted Sno-White, fitted with a Torque Flight automatic, ordered by a customer whose name nobody now remembers. The last one was delivered to a distributor in Paris in June of 1971. Of the 7 domestic cars, 5 had automatic transmissions and 2 had the A833 4-speed manual with the Hurst pistol grip shifter. They came in Sno-White, in bright blue, in Tor red, in Bahama yellow, in lemon twist, in violet, and in a single Winchester Gray. They cost about $5,000 new. They are now worth more than most of the houses on the streets where they were first delivered. If you enjoy classic car stories, hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. The engine that made these 11 cars famous is the 426 Hemi. Designed by Tom Hoover at Chrysler, sometimes called the godfather of the Hemi, it had been built since 1964 for racing. It made its way to the street in 1966 in a Terma form, with a lower compression ratio and hydraulic lifters in place of the race engine's solid ones. It still weighed 843 pounds dry, which is why mechanics called it the elephant motor. It still had hemispherical combustion chambers, which is what gave it its name, and it still made power that the factory was deliberately lying about. The advertised number was 425 horsepower at 5,000 RPM. The truth was somewhere closer to 500. Chrysler engineer Ed Poplawski, decades later, admitted what most of the men on the engine line already suspected. Lab-built Hemis routinely produced 500 horsepower under controlled conditions. There was no need, Poplawski said, to rate the engine higher. A higher number meant a worse class assignment for racers. It also meant a higher insurance surcharge for buyers. So Chrysler took the conservative number, the one measured at 5,000 RPM instead of the engine's actual peak near 6,000, and stamped it on the order sheet. Modern dynos on factory-spec rebuilds put a stock 1971 Street Hemi at 494 horsepower at almost 6,000 RPM, with 493 pound-feet of torque. The induction system was not a cross-ram, despite what generations of magazine writers have repeated. It was two Carter AFB 4-barrel carburetors mounted in line on a sand-cast aluminum dual-plane intake, flowing 1,250 cubic feet per minute combined. Sitting on top of the carburetors was the N96 shaker, a cold air scoop bolted directly to the air cleaner, designed to vibrate visibly through a hole cut in the hood. Plymouth's 1970 brochure called it the incredible quivering exposed cold air grabber. The men who built the cars just called it the shaker. At idle, with the heavy overlap cam loping at 6 or 7 inches of vacuum, the entire scoop would shake against its rubber gasket, in time with the engine's slow, uneven cadence. People who heard a Hemi at idle for the first time often asked if something was wrong. Nothing was wrong. That was the sound of a hemispherical combustion chamber waiting to be unleashed. The car around the engine was the work of John Eric Hurlitz, a designer who had been sending sketches to Chrysler from his bedroom in upstate New York at the age of 13. He graduated from Pratt Institute in 1964 and walked straight into the Plymouth design studio. By 1968, he was the studio manager. The E-body Cuda, which arrived for 1970, was his car. He drove a triple black 1970 convertible, 4-speed, 426 Hemi, as his daily driver. For 1971, the car got a quad headlamp grille that was used for that 1 year, and never again, 4 chrome gills on each fender, and the option of black billboard decals running across the rear quarters with the word Hemi spelled out inside them. It is the version everyone remembers. It is also the version that almost nobody bought because by the time the brochures hit the dealerships, the world had already turned against the engine inside it. The car cost $3,412 in base form. The Hemi option was $883.90, with the mandatory Dana 60 rear axle, the heavy-duty radiator, the track-pack suspension, and a small handful of additional options. A fully equipped 1971 Hemi Cuda Convertible left the showroom for around $5,000. That was about $34,000 in today's money. For comparison, a new Volkswagen Beetle that year cost $1,800. The Hemi was almost 3 times as expensive, and unless you could get insurance, you could not drive it home. Of the 11 cars, the most documented is the very first one, the Sno-White automatic that rolled off the line on September 9, 1970. It is now nicknamed the White Elephant. It spent decades in private hands in Kansas. It was restored in 2003 by Julius Steuer, of Restorations by Julius in California, a master restorer whose other clients have included Jay Leno, Hulk Hogan, and Tom Morello. It changed hands at Mecum Kissimmee in 2016 for $2.53 million, including the buyer's premium. 10 years later, on January 17, 2026, the same car came back across the Mecum stage with 2 complete validation reports from Mopar authority Dave Wise and sold for $3.3 million. It is the second most expensive Hemi Mopar ever sold at public auction. The most expensive is a bright blue 4-speed, one of just 2 domestic 4-speed cars ever built. It surfaced at a federal forfeiture auction in Kenmore, Washington, in December of 1999, seized in a drug investigation, and sold for $410,000. The buyer commissioned a full restoration, again from Julius Steuer. 15 years later, on June 14, 2014, in front of a crowd at Mecum, Seattle, that same car opened bidding at $1.2 million and sold 8 minutes later for $3.5 million on the hammer, $3.85 million with the buyer's premium. 5 collectors chased it. The crowd applauded when the gavel dropped. To this day, no traditional American muscle car has sold for more in a public auction. The car that almost broke that record was a Winchester Gray 4-speed manual, the only Winchester Gray Hemi Cuda convertible ever built, originally exported to France in 1971 and sold to a French enthusiast named Jean Tessier. It was repatriated to America in 1993 after an American collector responded to a small advertisement in a French car club newsletter. It rolled across the Mecum, Indianapolis stage in May of 2021 with a reserve of $5.75 million. Bidding climbed to $4.8 million. The reserve held. The car went home unsold. It would have been, at that price, the most expensive muscle car in history. Then there is the in-violet car, plum crazy purple, the only one in that color ever built. originally exported to Canada and reportedly stolen from its first owner sometime in the 1970s. For roughly 3 decades, the registry showed the car as missing. On New Year's Eve, December 31, 2001, a Michigan collector named Harold Sullivan was driving past a property in Auburn Hills when he noticed a flash of purple under a tangle of weeds and tree saplings. He stopped. He walked through the brush. He found a 1971 Hemi Cuda Convertible tangled in undergrowth 5 days away from being scrapped. He bought it on the spot. The 2-year restoration that followed, completed by Cummins Restoration in Grand Haven, Michigan, and Ted Mazurek in Madison Heights, won top honors at the 2005 Meadowbrook Concours d'Elegance. In January of 2013, the car sold at Barrett-Jackson for $1.32 million. A car that had spent 30 years in a tree was now the price of a small office building. What makes these 11 cars worth what they are worth is not just their rarity, though they are among the rarest production cars America ever built. It is the timing. They are the last. The 426th Street Hemi was killed for 1972. The Cuda Convertible was killed for 1972. The compression ratio they ran on, 10.25 to 1, was made impossible by the new emissions rules. The leaded gasoline they were designed for was outlawed at the pump on January 1, 1996. The Hamtramck plant where they were built was demolished in 1981. Plymouth itself was dissolved by Daimler Chrysler in 2001. The last car off the line, a silver Plymouth Neon, at the Belvidere, Illinois plant on June 28 of that year. Every component of these cars, the engine, the body, the brand, the factory, is gone. Only the 11 cars remain. Their values rose in step with the disappearance of everything that made them. In 1985, Galen Govier, the Wisconsin Marine veteran who built the Mopar registry from scratch starting in 1982, valued a 1971 Hemi Cuda Convertible in number 1 condition at between $15,000 and $25,000. By 1999, that figure had grown to between $250,000 and $500,000. By 2005, examples were trading for $3 million. The 2008 financial crisis briefly knocked them down to under $1 million. They have not been under $1 million since. As of 2025, Haggerty values a number 1 car at $4.2 million. The Brothers Collection, a private museum in Salem, Oregon, owned by 2 reclusive collectors who do not give interviews, holds 8 of the 26 Hemi Cuda Convertibles ever built across 1970 and 1971. Tim Wellborn, an Alabama collector with the largest private Mopar museum in America, owns at least 1. The remaining cars, scattered between France, Canada, and the United States, surface every few years on the auction stage, where they are appraised by Dave Wise, registered by Galen Govier, restored by men like Julius Stoyer and Roger Gibson, and sold under the gavel of Dana Mecum and his sons. The numbers keep climbing. Each sale resets the floor for the next. The factory where they were built is gone. Hamtramck Assembly, originally Dodge, Maine, was the 8-story complex on the Detroit border that built every Cuda from 1970 and 1971, along with millions of other Dodge and Plymouth cars stretching back to the 1914 Dodge brothers. At its peak in the 1920s, 22,000 people worked there. By the time it closed in early 1980, that number had fallen to 5,000. It was demolished in 1981. The wrought iron fence that once surrounded the complex with the letters DB for Dodge Brothers stamped along its length was rescued by the city of Hamtramck during demolition and now stands around a statue of Pope John Paul II on Joseph Campeau Street. That fence is all that survived. The site itself was bought by General Motors for $1 in 1981 and rebuilt as the Poletown plant, which is now Factory Zero, where they build electric Hummers. The men who built the cars are mostly gone too. The Polish line workers who came in on the 3rd shift in the spring of 1971, who clocked in under the watchful eye of foremen who remembered the 1937 sit-down strike, who lived in the small wooden houses around the plant and walked home for lunch when the line allowed it. They built one of the rarest cars ever to leave an American factory, and they did not know it. They were just running out the last orders before the line changeover. The Hemi cars came down the carrier just like every other Cuda. The engine line dropped a Hemi onto whichever body in white came along. There was no separate ceremony for the convertibles. There was no announcement that this would be the last year. The men finished their shifts. They drove home in their Plymouth Furies and their Dodge Polaras. They had no idea they had just built the most valuable American cars of the second half of the 20th century. The 11 cars themselves are mostly silent now. They sit in climate-controlled rooms, on lifts, behind glass. They are started occasionally for the cameras when they change hands, when an auction tent is set up in Kissimmee or Indianapolis or Monterey, when a buyer in a polo shirt raises a paddle and signs a check that would have built a whole row of houses in the neighborhood where the cars were born. The shaker still trembles, the Hemi still lopes. The cam profile that gave the engine its uneven, thumping idle still sounds the same as it did at the Hamtramck loading dock in May of 1971. The dual Carter carburetors still hiss when the secondaries open. The chrome rocker covers still glow Hemi orange under a single shop light. And on the right day, in the right room, somewhere between Salem and Alabama and Paris and Indianapolis, one of the 11 will fire up and idle and remind whoever is listening why a young man in 1971 would have mortgaged his future to drive one home if only the insurance company would have let him. They are the engines that ran out of road. They are the convertible tops that closed for the last time. They are the 11 cars that outlived the brand, the factory, the engine, the era, and the men who built them. And in the quiet, climate-controlled darkness where they live now, they are still running. Legends still running. Thanks for watching Runout Garage.